Hello, everybody.
Welcome back to the Other Side Lifestyle Podcast with Jim and Aram. Of course, if you've been listening each week, we need to address the same thing that I've addressed the last few weeks, and that's everybody together. We're going to say a big F-U to Aram because I'm still working out. I'm like 4 or 5 weeks in. The scale is barely moving at all, but I'm feeling much better. I'm getting my strength back, navigating injuries, all of that. So F you, Aram. He didn't believe in me. He secretly did a little bit, but mainly didn't.
Where are your calories at? 2,200?
Like the 22 range.
Is that actually a calculated deficit for you or no? Well,
It would
not.
be the typical time. I mean, it's been so long since I've tried to diet, but a lot of times I've gone in the 1,800 range.
Yeah.
So I'm not pushing anything right now. I feel good where I'm at.
Yeah.
But if I wanted to accelerate anything, then I got
another 400 or 500.
Yeah, that I could probably cut.
Yeah.
And see what happens. And I've been pretty much tracking everything, and it's perfect because our guest today is going to explain to us how if you don't do everything perfect, it's not worth doing at all.
Yep,
and
100%.
A lot of people, they get caught up in it's like, oh, what I do most of the time, or like they get caught up in nuance. And he's just going to answer everything to tell you, answer all your problems, answer all your questions. And we're excited because this is a live Q&A. We're on YouTube right now. If you didn't see the announcement, it's a live Q&A. So we'll be asking questions. So our first question from the chat is for Chase Smith, our guest. What up with that? I don't know what that question means. What up with that is the first question from the chat. Chase is like, what's happening? There is no chat. We are not live.
What's going on here?
You did not miss an announcement.
Internally panicking right now that I missed a complete big announcement. I didn't get that email.
I didn't see the live questions. Where are these questions coming from? People already logged on. I didn't think you guys were that big of a deal. Nobody logged on, Chase. Absolutely nobody.
Chase, just remember, you asked to be here.
I guess I did.
So you have to be okay with whatever transpires. I'm sorry. There's a way. Every time you sign up in Calendly for a podcast with us, there's a little tiny disclaimer that you're essentially signing up for, which waives all rights that you have, and we can basically use all of your material, repurpose it, take it out of context, and make you look like shit.
Yeah. I love it. Let's go.
Yeah.
I say some pretty stupid shit already, so I'm sure you'll have no issue with that at all.
Yeah. Now, all future content that you post, we will claim that you stole it, and we will file a lawsuit. That's just one of the things that we do.
I'll let my lawyers know.
You're the one who clicked the button. You consent. So,
thanks for coming on, Chase. It's been a while. We've been kind of interacting on social media for some time now, and give our 3 listeners an idea of who you are and why you're here.
Yeah, so I'll give the very short and brief, and again, I'm happy to expand anywhere you'd like me to. My story started back in, obviously, well, I always say I started in 2019, but really started since basically childhood, right? I think everyone else's does as well, and so I think we can definitely dive into that. But back in 2019, finally said kind of enough is enough, and actually met up with a coworker at the time, and she was like, hey, I want to lose weight, you want to lose weight, how would we do a little competition with each other? That's what it really kickstarted all of this. Shortly after a little bit of time, we recognized really the challenge wasn't really benefiting. It was just more so hey, let's just support each other, not really just a whole challenge mindset there, and just kept going. Then I'm working with a coach. I've worked with multiple coaches since then, lost over 100 pounds, really made a lot of improvements with my relationship with food along the way as well with that. I've done it through pure perfection, as you guys mentioned, and that's the whole storyline of all of this. I'm kidding. with all of that, far from perfect, definitely far from perfect. And that's, my journey now is really just hoping to inspire people to recognize you can be far from perfect and still make great progress along the way. It just takes it really does come down to making simple changes, not easy, right? But very simple changes over time, and you'll get to where you want to be at if you're consistent enough with it.
How long was it from the initial decision to the 100-pound loss?
It was less than a year.
Wow, I would categorize that as pretty fast.
Yeah, it definitely was. when I first started, it was, obviously it was not even a coach at that time. I knew nothing about nutrition. I mean, I've taken a nutrition course in nursing school, but that was like, like nothing related really like for fat loss. It was like the science of everything. And so with when I started, I was doing like intermittent fasting. I was doing like just eating clean eating, wasn't tracking any of my calories or macros. And so I was like, when I first started tracking, I was eating like 1,200-1,400 calories a day. So I was dropping quick in the very beginning, just because, I was eating basically like lean meats, fruits, and veggies, and also fasting during that time as well. And then once I recognized, like, okay, you don't have to fast, probably should be eating more food. Once I started to like link up with my first coach, and that's when I started to learn more about that kind of stuff. And I was like, okay, this is a little more sustainable route here before I burn out.
Nice. So why bother with a coach? I mean, what's the point of a coach? How did the coach support you? I want to know your experience with that, because a lot of people, they do what you did. They're cutting out things, all that. And they don't get a coach. You said you've had multiple coaches since that. I love having a coach when I have one. What was the difference between that and when you were doing it on your own?
Yeah. So when I first met this coach in April of 2019, and did not start working with him until about, I think it was like September or October, I believe it was that year. But all between that time, I was in his Facebook group, and he was helping me out, just like answering questions along the way and everything else. And really, and the whole time, and obviously, of course, like, April, May or so, he was like, hey, obviously offered me to work with him. And I was like, no, I really don't think, I don't think I need your help right now. Like and rightfully so, I was still losing weight really fastly. There wasn't a big need for it at that time. And then over the summertime and then kind of getting into the fall, things started to slow down a lot. And obviously, I'm sure at that point, like, I was probably not being as consistent, just because I've been in such a big deficit, and adherence started to drop, and was kind of tracking, not tracking, but just really just wasn't sure like where to go next. I was like, hey, like, things are really slowed down. What's going on? That's when he offered me again, was like, hey, this, could be a good opportunity for me to help you out through this a little bit closer and have a better look at things. And so that's when I hired him. And man, just night and day difference. Like, just, and having someone, as I always describe it, it's like having someone in your corner all the time supporting you, and someone who's going to point out the things that you need to hear, not always what you want to hear, but the things you need to hear, and hold you accountable to what you say you're going to do. Or when you have those tougher days when you want to throw in the towel, because I've had many of those since 2019. And when you have those days come up, having that person say, wait, hold on, take a step back. Let's separate some of the emotion and look more at the logic here for just a moment here. Dive into that a little bit more, and then we can probably uncover what's really going on. We're going to get through this, and so on. But I think that's been the biggest thing, just having someone there just to root for you and, be your cheerleader when things are going really well, but be the coach when, things aren't going so well.
Yeah. What do you think was the biggest thing since losing weight, having a coach, having got all this whole process that you did uncover? The
biggest thing I did uncover? Oh man, I feel like that could go
let's give them,
because we referred to like, think a lot of this stuff goes back to childhood. Like, was there anything that you like, it really clicked, like, oh, this is what I uncovered about myself, what I've been doing to myself? Or did you have any of those? Doesn't have to be the biggest thing, but maybe something.
Yeah,
I know it's a deeper question.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of my, I was always really horrible relationship with food, and just was binge eating, and had that started at a really young age, just with coping with just any type of like stress and things like that. And I always like to, like, before I like dive into this too, I always like to point out, like, both amazing parents, and like nothing like super crazy like that, thankfully no like abuse, thing like that, yada yada yada. I like to just be very clear about that, because I don't want people ever think I have bad parents, because I love them both to death. But that said, went through a divorce when I was around like 5 years old or so. Went through that. My brother had a lot of troubles just behaviorally and such growing up as well. So I was the good kid growing up, and just kind of kept my head down, and it was like, oh, feelings? No. What are those? Oh, you don't have time to deal with those kind of things. You got to be the good kid, behave yourself. And so I found myself numbing myself with food, basically, to work through those kind of emotions growing up.
Was it something where like love was shown by providing food? Because I know a lot of people have to deal with that. Like, this is how we show love. I'm going to get you this food, get you this dessert, get you this snack. Was that something that you dealt with growing up?
Yeah, I mean, it was always access to anything growing up. I mean, I look back and I joke, and it's weird what it was called, like the. So when my mom remarried, it was 5 of us kids in the house, and she used to have what was called the snack basket sitting on the corner of the kitchen counter that was just full of little Debbie cakes and crackers and cookies and cakes and everything else. And it was just free range, whenever you wanted something. And so that very quickly was just super easy access for me just to be able to grab things. And then I don't know exactly when it started it's weird. It's kind of a weird like time period of like knowing like when things started to pick up and when it started to shift, but eventually started like sneak eating. I'd grab like 3 or 4 little Debbie cakes and go down to my bedroom and like, throw them underneath the bed, the wrappers underneath the bed. So they were hidden so no one would see those, or, go shove them down the trash can. Like I started to develop those kind of behaviors and just really just not, like I started to notice like, man, I am eating a lot more. And then I would hear comments of like, oh man, do you really need like 3 of those things? Or did you eat 5 of those? Like, when they would find out that I would eat, larger amounts and such. And so through that time period, I just, restricted, or not restricted, but I hit it even more. And then the biggest time period of when things really started to pick up and get a lot worse was when I got my license and had the ability to go wherever I wanted, buy whatever I wanted, eat whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted.
Wherever you wanted.
Wherever I wanted.
In the car. Yeah, it's easier to hide. Yeah.
Fast food, gas stations, you name it. Like I mean, looking back, it was awful. I mean, I felt like I couldn't go from one place to another without just making a stop somewhere. If there was something in between, a fast food or a gas station for something, I was getting it and eating on it. And again, it was just continue to hide that and not want to, like, oh, man, you're really gaining weight. Yeah. I don't know why. Like, obviously, yeah, I know why. I'm eating all these things all the time.
Yeah, I want to talk about your perspective on that, because I think it's hard to be relatable to a population of people that are on the obese side when you've never lived it, because they can't fathom that you understand what it feels like. Now, I honestly, I don't, right? Like I would categorize myself as like pudgy and unathletic when I was a kid, but I was never fat. Like I was never somebody who got ridiculed for being fat. I had to deal with other ridicule because I was foreign and I was
there it goes.
Whatever else.
It all goes back to the immigrant
but,
status.
We all have our fucking cross to bear. Not all of us had an easy upbringing like Jim did. But.
Very white bread.
Wait for it.
Very suburban white bread.
So
I never knew that how much my parents struggled. It was like
until you get older, but like
until you get older, then you find out that stuff. But yeah, it was like goodwill and all that. But man.
People have this belief system where it's like, well, I've been obese or fat my whole life, right? And it's like I was born that way. And I want to really just dive into that concept. And I don't want to say dispel it because I have my own thoughts on it, but I want your thoughts on it. Do you truly believe that people are born that way and they're fucked and that's it? Or do you think there's another alternative way of thinking about that?
That's a great question. And that's something that, sure, I obviously there's, I think there is some like genetic components out there and such, but I think that, you're not handcuffed to your genetics. Like that's a death sentence of like, you're just going to live like that the rest of your life. Like I think a lot of it, and I'm not even going to try to, I can't remember the quote, so I'm not going to try to butcher it here, but it basically on the lines of like, nature versus nurture, right? Where it's like, you can be born in this with something, but then also make the choice to change the trajectory of that. You can be the one that draws the line in the sand and says, nope, I could easily, it's easy to go that way. Right. But you don't have to go that way. You can make the decision to change that if you choose to. And I think, it really comes down to being willing to make that decision. That's something I've had conversation with clients even, to this day. And it's like, and I don't know, I hate to like dive like, and I hate to like put labels on it, but I think, it can fall into like the victim mindset where it's like, that's just how I am. It's just who I am. Like, I can't change this. And it's like, well, like you can, if you want to. Sure. And maybe your environment was not set up to make it easy on you. Maybe
yours wasn't.
Exactly. I had everything that I could at my disposal. But you have to be the one to say, hey, you know what? I can change this. And once you recognize, I feel like it should be empowering to know, like, you can make that decision and change. Like, you can be the one that changes your generational health, and because as we know, like, a lot of your habits will pass on to your kids' habits and so on and so on and so on. And so you can be the one that changes those things. And so to kind of circle back and answer your question, I do believe that there can be some influence from where you came from, but I definitely believe, I've proved myself, like you can change that and decide like which direction you want to go if that why is strong enough, behind that.
Yeah, I think there's a pretty high level of tribalism when it comes to making certain statements that are very blunt and science and factually based, right? Because I think the
Mm-hmm.
fact of the matter is we're not really paying attention to our environment when we're in our adolescence. Like, not people aren't taking inventory of the types of foods that are around their house or the way that they're eating, because their parents probably aren't even that mindful about what's in the house and what they're eating. So I think people say things like, "Oh, well, I was born this way. I don't remember babies coming out at 25 pounds. It just doesn't happen," right?
I was
Like
27.
and like I came out as a 10.5 pound baby, which is like on the larger size of babies, but like I wasn't born obese. And the only way that I would have been able to gain weight more than I should have is by being fed more than I should have. And that's it. And you have no control over that as an adolescent. If you're exposed to the food and the food is everywhere and there's no limitation on it, like my brother's house is the same way. You walk into my brother's house, traditional European, fucking candy bowls and snack bags everywhere. Like every room of the house has another thing to grab. And then you go to my parents' house, dried fruit and bowl of nuts right in the middle of the kitchen table, out in the open all the time. You know, look at anybody's pantry who has children, snacks everywhere all the time. It's not hard to imagine that this can become a problem. But I think people that live in a place, like you said, in a place of victimhood, will hear that narrative and start to get upset about it, right? That person does. Whereas you could have gotten upset about it, be like, well, fuck you. You don't know what it's like. It's so hard. And then you just wrap yourself in that blanket and that's the end of it. Versus saying, hey, this sucks. I don't like to feel like this. I don't like to look like this. I have choices and I've been making ones that aren't that good. And I think that, like you said before, it's an empowering message to know that you're capable of change and that you are able to change the way that you look at things, as opposed to what everybody else, or not everybody, but a majority of people, they want to stay stuck in this pattern of thinking and almost assuming that there's no way out. And that's where I think
that it's just going to be something that's going to be instant. I mean, that's what I was putting in my stories today about, like, there's not going to ever be a moment where this instant transformation, things like me getting a massage and going to the chiropractor yesterday, opens up the pathway for my body to be able to start moving the way that it should. So once but then that's where the work comes in. So now it's like, okay, now that I can move better, I need to make sure that I'm moving or my body's going to go right back to where it was. So it's the same thing with this. Once our eyes kind of become open to, I can make the change, that's when the real work begins, because it's not going to be a light bulb click where all of a sudden it's easy to not go to food to feel love, to not go to food to numb feelings. There's a lot of work involved. So I do think it becomes pretty easy to just be in that victim mindset of, this is just how I am. You know, we know that labels are so dangerous, or powerful, I should say. I shouldn't even say dangerous. Labels are so powerful. So now, can I change my label? And was there a point for you where it clicked in terms of the way that you were labeling yourself? I'm sure, I mean, we all still struggle with labels from our childhood, even as adults. Like, you're still dealing with these reoccurring thoughts, but is there something that you kind of go back to, whether it's like a mantra or like a phrase or an identity that kind of gets you feeling strong in those moments of weakness?
You know, because I was just going to add, you know, when you guys were talking about that, I want to make it very clear too. Like, I definitely played victim for many, many, many years. Like, going through like high school. I mean, I remember first trying to diet probably when I was like 12 or 13 years old, when my mom was trying to diet, and she had bought the Nutrisystem stuff for herself. And again, she wasn't encouraging me to eat those, but I saw it and I was like, oh, you eat these foods and you lose weight. Like, my 12-year-old brain thought that. And so, you know, I remember first trying kind of around that time of like, or thinking about, I want to lose weight. And all throughout, you know, from that point and all the way through high school and every time else, you know, I would try diets, and it was just, you know, I would lose 20, maybe 30 at most pounds, and then just be like, this doesn't work for me. See, I just can't do it. It's just not meant for me. And like, I'll try again next year. Like, and it was really just because I was doing so many restrictive things that, like, the first opportunity that I thought like I've quote unquote failed, it was just like it almost was easy to just give up because it was so restrictive or whatever I was doing at the time. And I think when it first started to kind of click for me was in 2019. I think after like I lost like 50 pounds or so, it was like, damn, like this is actually like, this is working. This time is different. This time feels different. Like, I actually think I can change this. Like actually, and I think it came down to learning the science behind it as well. Not some like, oh, I need some crazy diet to do or something with a name on it or some, buy some box meals or whatever it may be. Like, no, I can actually like just be aware of how much I'm eating, put myself into a sustainable calorie deficit. And it's not about doing 5 hours of cardio every day in the gym just to kill yourself. Like you can do things in a sustainable way and lose body fat. And I think around that time, that was just when it started to click for me of like, and shifting the kind of that thought process of like, no, like I actually have control over these things now. Let me go do that. Let me take control of this and start, making some more progress for myself.
Can you talk? Because I think we hear the idea of what a victim mindset, or people will label things as a victim mindset, or talk about the concept of a victim mindset. Can you pull out, because you've lived it, right? Like you said yourself, you found yourself in that place often. What are the characteristics? What are the actions? What are the thoughts of somebody who's living in that mindset?
I think some of it comes down to just thinking you're not able to change, or that you are, and I'm trying to think of another word other than victim, but like you're a victim to your circumstances of like, your life of like, like it's just how it's supposed to be. I was born into this family. I was living in this household and I'm just this way. Like I can't change. And I think that's the biggest thing is like it's giving the control to everything else except for yourself. And
that's a cool concept. That's a good way to think about it, I think.
Well, because once I started to get out of that, and actually I learned this at, I forget who, I think this is when I heard Tom Bilyeu speak once. And I really, one of the concepts that I heard him really mention that I really stuck with me was when he said, whenever something happens, get used to pointing 10 fingers back at yourself and ask yourself, what could I have done differently in this situation here? Take full ownership and then make a next decision. Now, granted, are there times when other things are outside of your control? Absolutely, 100%. But at the end of the day, we always have a choice. Like I'll even like, use an example here that I've talked with clients before, when they'll say like, oh, like, my, dinner plans got canceled and I had to go out to eat through the drive-through. I had to. And I'm like, well, hold on here. You still had a choice. You could have said no. And I always tell them like, hey, I'm not telling you you can't eat dinner that night, but I want you to always keep control of the power for yourself. You could have said yes. You could have said no. That is your choice. Just because, something plans changed and all of a sudden you feel like you have to order in to drive through. Okay, maybe that is your only option tonight. But again, you have the choice. You have the power to say yes or no in that situation. No one is forcing you to eat the food in the drive-thru. Again, that might be only circumstances. I understand that. But again, I always like to just bring it back around to you're still in control all the time. And when you have that power for yourself, it's you just feel so much more in control of your life in general in those areas.
Yeah, and even in that situation, you still have the choice of what you're going to get or which place you're going to stop at.
Exactly.
You still have choices within what feels like no choice. I like to always talk to you about having a backup plan for when you're unprepared. Mm-hmm. So when you are unprepared, what's your go-to meal? Whether it's, there's Chipotle that's nearby. That's my go-to when I didn't have meal prep. Or like I always have a bag of the sweet teriyaki chicken breasts, like the frozen, not the greatest thing in the world, but pretty good macros. So like, oh crap, I'm out of other things to prep. I can always throw those things in the microwave and eat a pretty good macro-friendly, protein-rich meal. Like having backup plans for when you're unprepared. So I absolutely agree with what you're saying.
And the same car that you're sitting in the drive-thru at can take you to the grocery store. And the same car that you're sitting at the drive-thru at can take you to a better option restaurant. Now, listen, if you're out in the middle of bumfuck nowhere.
That's what I was kind of going with, yeah.
I mean, listen, there was a time in my life when I coached very insensitively with not a lot of empathy for people's circumstances. But now that I've opened up my eyes to the realities of the world, where there are parts of the country that are a little bit more disenfranchised, and there are places where there isn't a fucking Whole Foods or a grocery store open after midnight, and the only option you have is a McDonald's or a KFC or a Taco Bell, or else you're fucked, and that's it. That's all you got. In that case, like, are you just going to say fuck it and eat that thing and make the best choice there? Yeah, you can.
And if you do, it doesn't mean that you ruined anything or that you failed.
No. Exactly.
Like, there's certain times I was driving cross country or I was driving from one place to another with my family. We got caught in traffic, and this was the only place we can get to at this hour of the night. Those are not the decisions that make people fat.
Yeah,
100%. Yes.
That's where I think people really lose perspective. Is like, well, it's that. No, that decision happens once every 6 months. It's what are you doing every single day on average? What do your weekends look like on average? That's the stuff that we have to look at. And that's where I think people don't pay attention enough.
Yes.
I think I don't know if it's willfully blind to it or if it's just, they're just moving so goddamn fast into other directions and they have so many other responsibilities, poor time management skills, all of these things that you and I will probably talk to clients incessantly about every single day to figure out what is the roadblock that's preventing you specifically from making a good choice or for making a better choice or on even conceptualizing choices as good, better, best versus good or bad.
Yes.
And I think just changing that perspective alone can give people enough agency to then be able to say, hey, I have a fucking choice. I don't have to be a victim to my circumstance. And I can set up an environment that's relatively decent most of the time. And then the other 2%, I don't give a fuck about because that's not going to move the needle anyway. I want you to talk about that aspect of stuff because like you said, your journey was long, it was sloppy, it was full of blood, shit, it was full of issues and nothing about it was perfect. How many times did you want to stop? How many times do you still want to stop now?
Oh, there's still times to this day, even. I mean, it's the journey never ends, right? I mean, it never has a finish line. And when it comes to, and actually, I want to tell a little bit, one quick story that actually, it was the big epiphany moment that I had. The first time that something like this came up back in 2019, it was like May or June of 2019, and it was a going away party for someone at work. And I went into the break room, everyone brought in tons of food and everything under the sun for this going away party for someone. And I had a plate of food, another plate of food, then I had a dessert, then a second dessert, I had a third dessert. And that was like the first time I had really kind of like, for lack of better words, like kind of blown it, out of proportion since I had started in 2019. And up until that point, like I had not binged. I had, I was really rigid and really like dialed in throughout that time. And I left out of there that day feeling miserable, guilty, shameful. I had ruined it. And just the worst self-talk coming in of just like, look at you pig, you screwed this all up again. See, I know you couldn't do this. You went all these 6 months. Now you just blew your entire 6 months out of the water here. You just ruined it. Might as well just give up. I mean, all these awful words going through my head as I'm going out of here. And that coach I mentioned that at that time, and again, we were working together, but I messaged him and I said, hey man, I fucked up. Like I really just blew this all up. I way overate. I'm just kind of, and he was like, hey, like, did you enjoy that meal? I was like, yeah, of course. It was really good food. And he was like, awesome. Tomorrow morning, right back at it. What's your breakfast? Let's get right back at it next day. Like you've done absolutely nothing to your journey. And it sounds like in the moment, it sounds like, saying it now, it sounds kind of silly when you talk through it like this, but I know that person who's been in their situations, just like I was in that time, it was like the light bulb went off. It was like, oh, I can have a day like this when, oops, I just ate everything and it doesn't ruin progress. And I was able to get right back at it the next day. And that was like the moment when I recognized that it doesn't matter the one-off days that, you end up going off the rails. Sure, it can't happen all the time. But again, it goes back to majority versus minority. This is just, something that happens every 6 months. Ain't no big deal at all. It's a drop in the bucket compared to everything else. And so I think that's when it really started to sink in for me of like, I can do this. Like I can live my life. I can have the F up days and I can, screw up many times more. If it happens, it happens, but it's how I bounce back. And that's one big thing I'm sure both of you guys talk with your clients a lot, and I do as well. It's like the art of bouncing back, like as quick as you can right after. Don't let one meal turn into 6 meals, 8 meals a week, 2 weeks. Like next morning, back at it. Next meal, back at it. And so that's one thing that really started to sink in with me throughout this time, and just recognizing like, hey, like how can I control as much as I can on as many days as I can? And by having more discipline and utilizing that as much as I can on the majority of the days, that opens up more flexibility for me on the other days when I do want to go out with friends and have, a couple drinks and eat somewhere, where it can open up, going to the birthday party and having the cake and ice cream and not caring about going over my calories for the day. But I think a lot of people, I always talk about it, I explain it this way too. I think we all, and I always like to say, like, we want to remove a little bit of guilt and shame from like foods and eating. We want to work on removing those kind of things. But let's face it, if you go Monday through Friday and you're on point, on plan, and you're hitting your numbers and you're feeling really good and consistent, you're going to feel a lot better going into that Saturday cookout and not caring about if you go over your calories that day, versus you've been sloppy all week long, not really hitting your targets, just kind of half tracking and eating things that aren't aligning with your goals all week long going into that Saturday. Again, I never want to encourage any guilt or shame with this, but let's face it, you're just not going to feel as confident going into that Saturday cookout. Be like, man, I've not been on point all week, and now here's another meal I'm going to be eating out on Saturday. It's just the reality. And so I think just recognizing, like, where can we tighten up things when you have control? Like, I encourage clients, like, the eating out shouldn't be for convenience. It shouldn't be like, oh, yeah, I just didn't have time, I'm going to just go grab, Chick-fil-A drive-through. No, like, have a backup freezer meal. Like Jim, like you said, like having like other foods in the freezer or fridge like available. Sure, maybe not the quote unquote best options, but a lot better than swinging through drive-throughs and getting chicken tenders and French fries on the way home. So many people use those things as convenience and just as an anytime meal, rather than making those make those for the absolute emergencies or the special occasions. But as I once heard, and I'm sure you guys have heard this before as well, if every occasion is a special occasion, then nothing's a special occasion. Yeah. And so we have to get really aligned with what actually is a special occasion for you, and how can we dial in everything else when we have the control that we do.
Yeah, like you just said, aligned. I mean, if we can start knowing who we want to be, how we want to live, and then living more in alignment, there'll be a lot less guilt and shame. It'll be easier to make decisions in those situations versus just permission because I was good all week. Like you said, I mean, that can help in one way, but at the same time, it could be bad for another individual. I was good all week, so now I'm allowed. And then they're never quite seeing that progress. And it's so important too to understand, like, our ego's job is to protect us. So that was your ego telling you that you're a failure. It seems like the opposite of what people think ego is. People think ego is like cocky, but ego is like, yo, you've been living this way your whole life. Don't try changing on me now. And so as soon as you mess up, ego's coming in going, I told you so, I told you so. And that voice of I told you so is literally doing everything it can to stop you from making any change.
So true.
And if we can just understand and recognize that's what this voice is, it's trying to stop me from making change to protect me, just like my muscles tighten up to protect my back so that I don't do anything and it makes it worse. It's all protective. Our body does it. Our mind does it. And getting that permission from that coach, getting no shame or guilt or what's wrong with you from that coach allowed you to be able to move past it quicker. And I think, too, it would be good for people to understand when we measure someone's physical health, a big part of their cardiovascular health, how quickly did they get their heart rate back to resting after doing something that was, exerting for them. That's how we measure someone's physical cardiovascular health, how quickly it can come back to normal. Same thing with mental health. Something pisses you off.
Yep.
How quickly you can calm down, not stay pissed off for hours or days. That shows a certain level of mental health. And it's the same thing with this. You go off the rails, how quickly can you come back, like you said, to baseline? And that's a skill. Like, you have to physically train to get your heart rate to be able to come back to baseline quicker. You have to manage some of these mental and emotional triggers that get you fired up to bring it back down. And it takes that experience that you just shared, getting back to it. You do that over and over again, and you start to realize, oh, there's no guilt and shame in this based on the situation for that individual, and I can get right back to it the next day. And you train your body to be able to get back to it instead of it turning into doom and gloom. This is who I am. This is how I have always been, and suppressing that ego voice that fucks us over.
So,
end rant.
You're obviously somebody who's very much on the spectrum to really be cognizant of food relationship issues. And I think any coach that's talking about a client's relationship with food or disordered relationships with food, we're always almost taught to avoid certain words, like things like guilt and shame, or you don't want to label foods as good or bad. And the pendulum has swung for me, I think, in the last couple of years, because I was very much on the safe side of stuff. I didn't want to piss anybody off. I didn't want to stir anybody up. I didn't want to say the wrong thing so that, I would lose a follower or lose somebody potentially to be a client. But that also made me lose my conviction, because in my opinion, I'm curious to hear what yours is, I think a little bit of guilt and a little bit of shame is not a bad thing. I mean, obviously, if you're living in a perpetual state of guilt and shame, just like if you're living in a constant state of cortisol inflammation or whatever else, like,
are you asking us to understand nuance right now, Aram?
Yeah.
I cannot follow this very hypocritical dialogue that you are providing right now.
So, like, you know what I mean? Like, whether it's surrounding food, whether it's I drank too much and acted like an asshole, whether I said something wrong to my friend, whatever it is, guilt and shame is a signal that something internally is happening. And I think instead of people being like, well, you shouldn't shame people for eating a certain way, or you shouldn't have guilt around food. Well, if I sat there and knowingly ate 3 bags of chips, knowing I wasn't even hungry, I was just fucking eating it like speed.
Were they salt and vinegar? Were they salt and vinegar chips?
You know me. You know my preference.
Dill pickle seasoning chips.
Ew, gross. Get out of here.
Ew, even worse.
Sour cream and onion. Rough.
White.
Okay, now I'm with you.
The Ridge sour cream and onion, old school.
As somebody who's dealing with people's relationship with food and trying to be as careful as you can, like, do you apply a little bit of tough love in those moments when it's like, hey, like, you made the decision, like, 'cause it always comes back to choice. You had 3 bags of chips in the fucking pantry. You decided to eat all 3 in one sitting. That probably didn't feel good. What did that teach you? Like, is that something that you would find to be an okay way to communicate? Is that how you would communicate with people? Like, what are your thoughts around this idea of guilt and shame with food?
Yeah, it actually, what's really funny is I was actually listening to a podcast, I think it was yesterday or today, I'm slowly starting to kind of shift a little bit of like my own thinking around this as well. And I heard it described where it's like guilt can be okay in doses, right? Like guilt just means like you did something, that goes against what you're aligned with, against what you're trying to achieve. And that feeling you have just says like, hey, that wasn't right? Not saying it was awful or you ruined things. It's just, you didn't do something that really felt really good. And so, like you said, like you eat the 3 bags of chips, you're probably like, yeah, I probably didn't feel good. Now the shame is like where like the internal voice that's coming back at you, like, oh, you're a piece of shit for eating those 3 bags of chips. Like, no, all right, hold on. Like that, I feel like we need to kind of start pulling some of that and working through that corrective language there, so we're not shaming ourselves, because I feel like the guilt can be okay in doses to just remind you like, hey, that probably wasn't the best choice for us. But then we work on, I think, minimizing the amount of shame, because too much shame then prevents people from even wanting to try to show back up for themselves, where it's like, that is like, like you said, Jim, like the ego kind of speaks up and says like, oh, you're a piece of crap. Why do you even do this? You're going to fail. You always have been a failure. All those voices start coming back up. And too much of that, you're just like, well, shit, why am I going to try then? I don't care anymore. Right. So I think
it causes you to hide even more. I mean, shame causes you to hide and stay in your shadow. Like I think that's a great differentiation of what you're describing with guilt and shame. So I absolutely agree with that. And yeah, I mean, great point that Rob's bringing up. I think we agree with that. A little bit of guilt is good, but just even hearing that verbiage of the separation of guilt and shame, it's like, I think some people listening can go, oh, that's that's what I've been shaming myself instead of being led by maybe some of the guilt that I felt about things. Because there is absolutely a difference where we typically we clump it together, guilt and shame.
Yep. And I always have.
Yeah.
And this is something recently I'm just starting to kind of learn how to, okay, maybe I'd separate this a little bit. And as far as like how I approach it with clients, is I always approach out of curiosity, right? Like I let's just kind of give an example. Like, let's say I look at somebody's food log and I see, 5 bags of candy or something like that on their food log. And I'm like, oh man, okay. We went over our calories, like 2,000 calories yesterday. Like it was a pretty rough day. I'm not going to go in there and be like, hey, like what's all this candy you had yesterday? Like I may be like, hey, like tell me a little more about what's going on yesterday. More so like, and it's because like they already know, I'm sure they already feel let's face it. people put enough guilt and shame on themselves already.
The client's like, he fucking looked at my log. That's why he was asking about Wednesday. So what's happening Wednesday with you? Oh, gee, I figured out this pattern. I figured out this guy's questions.
Yeah. So, I mean, they know why I'm asking, but it's like, I try to take it with as much curiosity as I can, because because here's the thing. Here's what I've also learned, because I've also, as we've all with coaches, go back and forth of like, how much you push and what directions and whatnot. And there's been times when I have been like, hey, why are we eating like 5 bags of candy on Wednesday? And then it's like, what if family member died and they were just they hit at rock bottom that night. And I've literally had awful things have happened to clients, and they're just like, last night was awful. Like the worst day I've ever had in my life. And I'm like, cool. I'm glad I didn't. And I've had the times when I want to eat my own words. Like, oh, okay, probably not the time to get on you about your 5 bags of candy. Like we need to yes, that we'll work on that eventually. We're going to eventually come back and revisit like how we respond to things like that. But I'm much more curious when I reach out to clients, when I see things that just don't align with their goals, at a really high day or whatever it may be. It's just like, hey, like what's going on? Like, because I want to know the context before I know what happened there. Because if it was like, I've had people, I've reached out and they're like, hey, like, what's like the fast food? I thought you had your meals prepped for the weekend. Like, what's going on with the fast food? Like, oh, I had to take, my mom fell and had to go to the ER. So I had to eat cafeteria food that night. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, so that was like something totally out of your control. Like, again, so it makes sense. Again, like we can always go back and, okay, like, could something have been done differently? Sometimes the answer is no in those kind of situations, but I think it's always,
cares in that situation.
Exactly. In that moment, I'm like, I don't care what you ate, right? Like,
you're not prepping to get on stage. It's like,
exactly. And so I always lead with curiosity, figure out like what's going on. And then at that point, it is kind of been like, hey, so like, let's talk a little more about that. I think this is something that if we're always leaning towards these things when we're having these emotions and things like that, we need to start kind of unpacking, like, what are some other alternatives that we can start exploring to work through these things and not turn to food all the time. And I think it's just important to, I tell clients, I don't want to harp too much on the exact incident itself. Like, we can't go, no matter how bad we feel about yesterday, we can't go back and change anything that happened yesterday. No matter how bad we feel, how much we talk through it, nothing's going to change what happened. So number one, what are you doing this morning? Like, are we bouncing right back? That's my first priority. Like, are we getting back into this right away instead of turning this into a 3-day thing? And number two, let's unpack that a little bit. I like to look at what was happening before, during, and after. How are you feeling physically, mentally, emotionally, before, during, and after, right? Like, what sparked it? What triggered it? What led you to turning to that food at that moment? What was some internal dialogue going on during that time when you were eating these things, right? Like, were you aware of it? Was it more of like a F it moment? Was it just mindless binge that you didn't even like recognize until you were done with, and like, what was going through your mind afterwards? And so I think I like to kind of break it down, because sometimes when we try to there's situations where you can like kind of blanket solve the problem, but usually I like to kind of dissect it a little bit and look at, what's going on beforehand. What could we have done something like in the moment, or, right beforehand, before you turn to the food, or maybe when you recognized it halfway through that, bag of chips, maybe there was a moment where you're like, yeah, I kind of caught on to what I was doing, but I was like, well, it's too late now.
But even that's a victory for some people, to catch yourself in the middle and then be able to celebrate that. Like, in
100%.
the past, you didn't recognize it until afterwards. Now 100%. You recognize it in the middle of it. Next time you can recognize it in the middle of it and pull back versus continuing. So yeah, it's huge.
I always tell, speaking of that, I always talk to clients all the time, like progress when it comes to emotional eating and or binge eating, overeating, which they're two different things, which we can break into that if you want to. But I think it's important to recognize, like, progress is definitely not linear. And also, it doesn't mean never binging again. It could mean less food. It could mean catching yourself mid-binge, like you mentioned. It could mean bouncing back quicker. It could be more days in between binges. It could be less negative self-talk in those moments afterwards, not less beating yourself up, less shame around those as well. It could be maybe you communicated with your coach or for support quicker during those times. So when you were struggling, like, there's so many wins we can pull out of that. And I think it's important to recognize those things so much, like you mentioned, because the person who has struggled with binge eating or overeating and such, they probably won't recognize those things for themselves. And so they're just going to see it as one big failure regardless, like even if it was a smaller binge or a different type of binge, or they caught themselves, I still binge. And it's like, that's when we have to start bringing out the positives of, no, these are actually still forms of progress. Like you're making progress and winning through these situations here.
Yeah. And even reporting it to you when something bad goes is you practicing not living in shame. Because since you said like shame, we hide it. We don't want people to know. So just being able to admit something to your coach or to somebody that hopefully you have somebody that's holding you accountable if this is something that's important enough to you. And every time you don't tell that person, you are practicing more shame. Every time you don't tell them, you're reinforcing yourself. Don't tell anybody. You're going to be judged for it. You don't want to, and then that gets the person in the loop. I'm doing everything I can. I can't lose weight. I don't know what's going on, because they are living too much in shame. I think, but the people who are following that cycle need to hire somebody.
Yeah. I mean, you have to be willing to take ownership for what you're doing. I mean, like, and that's, you can act like it's not happening all you want, but at the end of the day, if you're still doing these things, like it's going to continue to keep unraveling. And so, like you said, you have to be willing to, let go of pride for a little bit of time. Say, hey, I need help. I need to figure this out. I need to figure out what's going on here, because the more you hide in it, the less we can do to help you with those things. And, I tell my clients all the time, I'm like, and all my clients know, like, there's never any guilt or shame, like, you're especially, mostly not referring to like shame, around these things. It's like, I want to help you through these things, but none of us can help our clients if we don't know what's going on actually.
Yeah, repeated cycles are going to continue to repeat unless you do something to interrupt that pattern. So if you're continuing to hide things, these repeated things are going to continue to come up in your life, because it's like your body's trying to tell you, your subconscious, your unconscious, like, hey, do something about this. It's going to keep coming up over and over and over again. But we get comfortable, we stay. The ego, that battle of like ego and unconscious, subconscious, and it's I think in this area, I think it's between like relationships with people and then our relationships with food and our bodies. Like, we see this so much.
What are some tactics that you use to help people with things like cravings and food noise?
So I usually kind of break it down into, there's a few different like categories you can kind of look at this, and whether it's like, number one, like, are you just restricting the amount of like calories you're eating in a day in general? Like, that was, I want to say easy fix, but obviously there's more nuance to it's easy as, not always the thing, but a simple way of just increasing our calories and make sure we're fueling ourselves enough and not eating too little. Very typical for someone who's trying to eat, 1,000 calories a day, can only go for so long until their body will just say like, you're going to feed me today. And then you end up overeating. You get that really strong rebound hunger response. Or is it, restriction of certain foods or food groups, right? If you tell yourself like, hey, I can't have that donut. And, all the time it's, you can't have that. You can't have that. You can't have that. You can't have that. I always use the example. Think about when you tell a kid, hey, don't push that button. Don't eat that.
Don't knock over my sandcastle.
Exactly.
I wasn't thinking about it until you said it. And now it's going down.
Exactly.
Turn your back.
Or another example I always use is, think about like if you have to get like fasting blood work in the morning, especially like if maybe you're not even much of a breakfast person, but that's like the one day you are so freaking hungry because now you can't eat until after blood work done. Perfect example. You can't have something, you're going to want it even more. And so
then at the same time, it's interesting because it's like when you have the reason not to do it, you don't do it. And even that could be like a little testament to yourself of, I don't have to give in to every strong temptation. I know it's a different point than what you were saying.
I've actually never looked at it that way. So I do like the out of that. That's a very good
it's like
point.
A pregnant woman who has to stop drinking coffee. This feeling strong. It's like something that they relied on. I need my coffee. They got their I need my coffee shirt and mug and and then they get pregnant. It's like, yeah, you shouldn't be drinking caffeine. And they stop.
Exactly.
So it's like you have the ability to, or they stop drinking alcohol because they're pregnant. But it's like, I need my drinks. I need my drinks. Yeah. It's wine o'clock somewhere. And I hate all these I'm just tired of the clothes and all that shit that just reminds people.
It normalizes it.
Yeah, like we're using these words to make it like you need it. And it's so fun and all of that. It's cool, I get it. But people then start buying that for their friend. And then the friend's got the wine o'clock glass. And they're like, oh, I got to use my glass. And then like the shirt, like all of that stuff.
Just reinforces that.
We're just programming ourselves and we don't even realize it.
Yeah.
So stop buying your friends' wine o'clock shirts and whatever other ones are out there.
Yeah. And
fitness pizza in my mouth. The fitness shirts.
Yes.
I'm keeping my mouth shut strategically.
He's texting somebody.
No, because I'm on the phone in front of you. I'm not texting anybody. I would go off on such a rant that I would get canceled today.
Go.
Got it. I'll keep talking then.
So,
so it comes out, are you restricting foods? Because then what happens is, going back to the donuts situation, if you say you can't have donuts, you're going to want to eat more. And you've told yourself, I can't eat donuts or I go way over. Well, the next moment you take a bite out of a donut, you're like, shit, here we go again. And just might as well eat the whole dozen. Where it's like, no, like you can have some in moderation. And you have to, I do think there's times, I don't want to get kind of too far off topic because I have more to say on the other thing, but I think there's times where, I think I heard Jordan Site say this once, where it was like, you have to go through periods of unimbalance to create more balance. Where it's like, there's times when like, maybe we shouldn't be having the donut every day right now. Maybe we should go through a period of like, hey, we say no to donuts, not out of we can't have them, but just to, you're craving. One of the biggest things with cravings is like, if you're constantly eating this stuff, you're just going to want it even more, right? Prime example, think about when you go on vacation and you eat like shit all week long on vacation, and you get back and you just want to still eat like shit and you're like, I'm trying to get back at it, but darn it, like I still want all these yummy foods. It's because your palate literally changes when with what you're eating. And so as you get more back into your routine again and not eating that stuff as often, you're not going to crave it as much. I literally just had a client this past week on our coaching call. He was, he's been giving me a hard time about not wanting to give up certain things just for periods of time. Let go a little bit. Let's start shifting a little bit. Higher protein breakfast, yada, 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 instead of the muffins and donuts and such. He's done that for like 1 week now. And he's like, I actually walked past the donuts in the break room. Didn't even want them today. He's like, that's the first time I've ever said that. And I'm like, exactly. We're changing our palate a little bit. We're not craving those things as much. And so I think that goes back to that. And the next one I want to talk about is identity. Some of it can be tied into identity as well when it comes to like binge eating and overeating and things like this. And I want to specify here too, to the listeners, because I think a lot of people label themselves as a binge eater when they may not actually be binge eating.
Yeah, they're just an overeater at times.
You're just an overeater.
Yeah, they're not blacking out, ate the whole thing, I don't know what happened.
Exactly. And I really like to, that's one of the first things I always differentiate with a new client. They say, I binge eat. And I'm like, well, tell me like your last time you binge ate, what'd that look like? And like, I got home from work and it was just a super stressful day. And I just said, screw it, I don't want to cook dinner tonight. I'm just eating the ice cream in the freezer. Like, that's not necessarily binge eating. You're making a very conscious choice just to say, fuck it, and just go eat your ice cream. Okay. Like, you had your ice cream. Like, that's not binge eating. Binge eating is resisting something, or, so ever so often, and then grabbing the box of donuts and going and sitting in your bedroom and just completely blacking out, just eating until you're physically sick and you just cannot eat anymore. That's more like a binge eating episode. And yes, binge eating can be overeating, but not all overeating is binge eating. Yeah. And so this ties into the identity side of things, because a lot of people will say, well, I'm a binge eater. No, you're someone who binge eats, or you're someone who overeats. Maybe you don't, and specify in between the two, because the moment you keep telling yourself that you are something, you're going to continue to show up that way. Right. Like I use the kind of an analogy a lot of times with explaining this, where it's like, we all have kind of like our diet resume, so to speak. We've all done the different diets. You look, imagine if you had like your resume of all the different diets and things you've done in the past, or ways you showed up for yourself. And when it comes to food and exercise and all the things, like, this is your resume. So the only thing you have to go off of is what you've done in your past. And so if you have binge eater listed on your resume, well, that's just who you are. That's one of your skills. That's what you're able to show up and keep doing for yourself. And so you have to be very careful slapping these labels on your resume here, because you're going to keep showing up as these things. And so be very careful of how you're using these words and focus more on, I'm an overeater, or maybe it's, I'm someone who binge eats. I'm someone who's working through binge eating, but I'm working to overcome that. Again, because you're always going to, I think I heard this line from Jared Hamilton, actually, where you're always going to self-sabotage to your identity, basically where the level of your identity is at.
Yeah, it's like you never rise to the occasion, you fall to your level of training. You'll see sometimes in like football team's weight room. I love that line. Yeah, exactly.
And so the identity piece is a big one. And then obviously with and then the last one is the emotion side of things. And emotional eating can be really challenging. I mean, it can be very complex. It can be simpler. Maybe it's such a wide variety. We feel like the whole podcast could be just on emotional eating, honestly. But I think number one, I am a pretty big advocate of therapy, of working through some of these things and trying to figure some of this stuff out, especially if you do have a binge eating disorder, or even if you think you may have something like that. I'm a big advocate of having something like that in your corner. I know that's helped me tremendously working through my own binge eating disorder, working through therapy, and beginning to unlock some more tools in your tool belt to be able to work through these episodes when these things are coming up. And then just having other ways to self-regulate your emotions. It just is so helpful. And whether that is, if it's coming from stress, are we working in the stress or working around the stress, right? Are we doing something like working in it? Like, maybe like journaling about it, meditation, breath work, are we dealing with the stress itself, or are we working around it? Distractions, right? Something else completely different, going to do chores, or, playing with the kids or walking the dog, whatever it may be. Both are important, because if we're always working in it, it's likely to burn out, because you're just constantly just surrounded and working inside of this and never allowing yourself a little bit of a breathing room. But if we're always working around it, then we're never actually addressing the root cause of what's actually going on. And so you have to have a little bit of both with that as well. But when it comes to the emotional eating side of things, it's really just finding some other ways that you can self-soothe. What are some ways that you can, it's going for a long walk, getting some fresh air. There's actually, if you somebody who's binge eats, just finding like something that can like snap you out of that moment when you almost need like call like a hard reset, basically.
Where it's you need a pattern interrupt at some point with anything that we're just in the habit of doing. We need to figure something out, and that's what you're describing, a pattern interrupt. Like, this is my go-to. I'm going to get this walk in first. It's very difficult. It all sounds nice. It's difficult for people to do, but they have to do it so they can learn to trust it.
And with that too, there's a lot of times what happens is a lot of this is so habitual, like the emotional eating side of things, that they have to find other pattern interrupts to help them then go for the walk. So one thing I'll encourage is like putting a sticky note. Like I've literally put a sticky note in my cabinet before. So when I open up the door, it has a little reminder for myself when I was working through this back then. One of my, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, the car used to be a huge trigger for me. I'd get in the car. Where was I going? And I had a sticky note in my car. It said, think long-term. Just a little reminder, just said, hey, like, don't think here in the moment. What do you actually want long-term for yourself? And so I would get in the car, and there's been many days I'd get off of work when I was still a nurse, and I used to always stop and get junk food after I get off work. Long, stressful day. And so I would go get in my car. I'd see that sticky note, and I'm like, really want food, but yeah, it's right. And there was times I'd literally drive home, like glancing at the sticky note every couple of seconds to remind myself, like, just keep driving home. Trust me, it's hard. It sucks some days, but you have to keep proving to yourself that you are capable of doing this. Or it's maybe a fridge magnet on the fridge. I told some clients, like, it doesn't have to be like a big sign that says, hey, don't binge eat, right? Like, no one wants that on their fridge. Like, put a flour magnet on your fridge. I don't care what it is. You know what that means. You go to the fridge, you see that flour magnet, and you're like, oh, wait, hold on. Pause. Because the one, and I guess I know we're getting close. I don't know what you guys had a cutoff time here, but I think one thing I'll share with the emotional eating side of things is something called Zen 10. I learned about this in the book called The Binge Code by Allie and Richard Kerr. Amazing book for binge eating. And it essentially breaks down of when you have this moment, when you do get that pattern interrupt, you see the fridge magnet, pause, say Zen 10, and then physically remove yourself away from where the food is at. If you're in the kitchen, get out of the kitchen. You're in the grocery store, get out of the grocery store. You're in the break room at work, get out of the break room. Wherever the food is at, remove yourself from food. You're not going to be able to pause for 10 minutes and stare at a pan of brownies for 10 minutes. Like, you need to get away from the food or wherever it's at. Set a timer for 10 minutes. In that 10 minutes, find something else to do. A distraction of some sort. Again, whether it's something, maybe you are working in the emotions or working around it. Find something for 10 minutes. At the end of the 10 minutes, you have a decision to make. You can either A, say, actually, you know what? I've thought through this. That was purely just because I was feeling really stressed out. I really don't need that. I'm going to be okay without it. 2, you maybe say, you know what? I'm still kind of fighting this urge. I really still want to dive into that sleeve of Oreos. I'm going to give myself for another 10 minutes. Set another timer to give yourself a little bit more time. Or 3, you're going to say, hey, you know what? Actually, I am hungry. Yes, I'm stressed, but I am actually hungry right now. So I'm either going to A, if it's actually mealtime, you haven't eaten yet, eat a damn meal. Or B, say, hey, you know what? I'm going to have some Oreos, but I'm going to have 3 instead of the whole sleeve right now. And so giving yourself that time. And so that Zen 10 technique is something I really use with a lot of my clients to try to just, it's all about finding the pause in between impulse and action. If we could insert that pause inside of there, it opens up so many more opportunities for you to make a conscious decision moving forward with that.
Yeah, I remember hearing that about like people trying to quit cigarettes was you can have the cigarette in 10 minutes. It's like when you have the strong craving for the cigarette, give yourself permission to have it in 10 minutes.
Yes.
And more often than not, 10 minutes later, you can give yourself another 10 minutes or that craving has passed. A lot of time. I mean, I think that's a great technique for people. Yep, you can have it.
I'm glad you said that.
A lot in 10 minutes.
I left that part out. I'm glad you said that. That was one thing I was going to say is, yes, when you walk away from the food, tell yourself, I can have that in 10 minutes, but not right now.
Yep. Yeah.
Because
sometimes you just need permission to fight that. As a child, I ate this in secret. I didn't have permission. So now it's like you need permission from a coach sometimes to forgive yourself. You need permission from a coach sometimes for whatever it might be. Give yourself permission to have it, and it can be a game changer for somebody. Absolutely.
Yeah. When it also encourages the abundance versus scarcity mindset, right? Like if you say I can't have that, now it's that scarcity mindset. Like, oh, it's going to go away. I can't have it anymore. Oh no, no, no. Well, I better just eat it one more time before it goes away for good. Like, or I just need to finish the pan of brownies now, so that way I don't have to worry about it tomorrow. And so you have to remind yourself you always have that. I got to tell people all the time, like,
let me just finish this and get it out of the house.
Yeah.
And then I get more, make more at a future date.
Yeah. No, I always tell clients, I'm like, remind yourself, like, you could go through the drive-thru and get like 50 Big Macs if you wanted to. Like, I know it sounds crazy, but like so many times people like look at these things like they just can't have these things. And I'm like remind yourself you are an adult that has money and you can go spend it on whatever you want and get whatever you want. You could go buy a whole wedding cake if you wanted to for your house. Like, would I recommend it? Probably not. But like that abundance mindset says I can have that whenever I want that.
Yeah.
And so you have to take away that abundance or that scarcity mindset. Because when it's scarcity brain, you're going to just eat it all up before it's gone.
Dude, in college, we would go to McDonald's. I think it was like 25-cent cheeseburgers on Wednesdays. And just buy a shit ton of them. And like we'd reheat them for like the next few days.
Oh, I worked at McDonald's for a little while. That's also what contributed to some of my habits.
Goddamn economy. Can't support 25-cent cheeseburger. I can't buy 50 cheeseburgers anymore like I did in college. It's ridiculous.
Oh,
That's one thing I'll say. With how expensive the food is, I mean, now a large pie is $20 plus to get delivered.
Oh, it's crazy.
Like if these are not reasons for people to start making food at home, I don't know what is. It's just like I have like almost out of principle don't want to order food and have stuff delivered. And I feel bad for the generation now because like what you said, when you got your license, you can go out and get anything. My son was hanging out with friends the other day. One kid DoorDash pizza and cinnamon bites or whatever. The other kid DoorDashed Wawa milkshakes. These are like kids DoorDashing food, 12 years old.
Yeah.
And I'm like, their parents giving them access to it. I understand the idea of,
it's
whatever.
Too
but
easy nowadays. It's way too easy.
Easy with no output. There's no output. At least you had to walk all the way out your door to the car.
I know.
They don't even. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be scary. If stuff isn't addressed. So it's good that there's people like you out there who have gone through it and understand it, and can connect with people in that way. If somebody is, if you're hearing what Chase is saying and you understand or you feel that way, like, yes, that's what it was like for me as a kid. Yes, I've always been very overweight. You probably want to be with somebody who's been through it. His info's in the show notes. You can hit him up. Aram's, a lot better than he used to be with his empathy and understanding. We are going to record now a secret 10-minute, maybe 20 episode that will come out on Wednesday where Aram's going to give his rant that he held back on. We'll do that later.
I'm sure it'll show up on social media at some point this week. Somebody will piss me off enough for me to. I'm just not filtering anything anymore. I don't give a fuck who comes at me. I don't give a shit if I lose half my following at this point. Like, I'm just so fed up.
Because it means nothing.
Well, because it's just such garbage. Like
I love it.
I'm walking through the grocery store in Colorado Springs over the last 2 days, and I see what the fucking problem is. Like, people are looking at me.
Dude, you should have done the Manitou incline.
And I didn't want to go to there. I worked out plenty while I was there. The last thing I wanted to do was the incline. But it's just like, none of this shit is fucking surprising. Like, there's garbage on the fucking shelves everywhere. You're giving your kids access to food delivery apps walking 6,000 steps is a fucking chore for people. And anybody wants to complain about their laundry and their fucking dishwashing, like, just go live in fucking Argentina or China or some other fucking place for a week and tell me that it sucks here and tell me how hard your life is. Like, I'm just so tired of it. I'm so fucking tired of it. If you're working on a farm all day and you don't have a fucking minute to spare and you're a single mother doing it, okay, sure, you got every sympathy I can give you. But if your husband works and you don't,
well, they don't have to exercise,
and you got two kids that are
they're working the farm, they don't have to. So they're at an advantage. All day.
Like, if you're in your late 40s and your kids are out of the house and you don't have to work, what fucking excuse do you have? Like, I don't give a shit that your mother tickled you when she was too little, or I don't care that your father didn't hug you enough, or I don't care who the fuck put their hands on you. At some point in your 30s and 40s, go seek out some goddamn counseling and get through your shit. Like, we all have it. Everybody has it. Chase had it. I had it. Jimmy had it in some way, or it showed up later in life. But if you keep wearing this as a fucking drape over yourself, then you're going to die thinking that you couldn't have done anything. And fine, that's fine. Just end it now then. It's just easier for everybody. You're using up less resources if you do. Like, I'm just fucking, like, I'm so tired. Like, oh, you're being so unempathetic.
I was with you until the last sentence, but I'm okay with it.
Like, it's such fucking hot garbage.
That was hyperbole,
like Chase,
folks. That was
like nobody made Chase fat but Chase. He talked to you about it incessantly. He told you that he stopped 100%. At every place he could for food. Guess what every other fucking obese person on this planet does? The same thing he did in a different way. So it's the same problem wrapped up in a different fucking emotional state. That's all it is. Like, the only reason why I don't eat like shit is because I'm tired of feeling like shit. That's it. I can tolerate feeling like shit 3 or 4 times a month, maybe. But most of the time, I have a business to run. I have people that I have to take care of. I have a fucking mortgage and a rent to pay. I don't need to feel like shit on top of that because I make bad choices. I'm going to set my life up in a way that makes me feel really, really good 98% of the time, and 2% of the time, I won't give a fuck. But if you don't care 40% of the time, then stop bitching about your fucking weight and stop telling me it's your hormones or it's some mythical creature called cortisol, because you can't even pronounce or spell these words, but you're regurgitating them because some fuckhead with a PhD said it on Instagram. That's it.
Yeah.
I'm just tired of it.
I think if people could wrap their head around, I'm eating this way and moving this way so that I feel good today.
That's it.
And feel good tomorrow. They would have such an easier time versus I'm only doing this to lose weight, because then when you don't see it, it's like, why am I doing this? But if you could simply wrap your head around, the three of us are living this way because we want to feel good. So whether there might be struggles and all that, I know, like Chase, like, I know I don't want to feel that again when I was 16, 17, 18.
100%.
Yeah.
So it's that, if that would make all of our lives so much easier if we could just embrace that mindset that you just said.
Well, and I think part of that also comes down to one thing I've also been embracing, just personally for myself. I feel like over the last, and
meth.
Man, you know my secret. Damn it, you know my secret. That was supposed to be for the special Wednesday episode. No, one thing I've actually been embracing a lot for myself recently. And again, I'm not going into all the details. Life's been throwing lots of curveballs lately, but that's here, not there. But this year, like, my biggest thing I've been focusing on is completely separating. Like, yes, allow yourself the time to sit in your shit and you have to throw your pity party if you need to. I agree. Like, you need those sometimes, but also recognize that I can still show up regardless of how I feel. Mm-hmm. Like, I can feel really stressed. I can feel really sad. I can go through a really tough, hard day, hard week, hard month, and still get my steps in, and still meal prep, and still show up each day at work and do what I need to do, and just still give it. Maybe it's not going to be 100% every day, but I can still show up. I think that's the biggest thing that I just wish people would recognize is, like, just because you feel a certain way, your feelings are not facts. You don't have to show up. If you feel miserable, guess what? You can still feel miserable and walk. You can still feel miserable and still eat what you prepped for your dinner that night. And I think so many people just, it's instantly, it's like, oh, I don't feel good. I want to just go eat this. I want to go eat that and feel better. Like, that's not helping you. Like,
yeah, it's not making you feel better. It's making you feel worse afterwards. Then the guilt, the shame, like, all those things come afterwards.
Exactly.
So I'm with you. You have the pity party, but you got to get out of the pity party. You don't have a birthday party for 6 months straight. You can't have a pity party for 6 months straight. You know, I mean, Aram knows I spent the last year and a half not having a pity party, but not stepping into the action of paying attention to my food the way I needed to and working out the way that I needed to. And it's like at a certain point, it has to end, you know? So, well,
and oftentimes that, and I've learned so much too, like I said, what I've been also embracing is that anxiety and stress is often lessened through action. Like when you are stressed and you're anxious, a lot of times it's because you have these open loops in your head, just freaking out about all the things going on. And your brain's like, what are you gonna do about it? What are you gonna do about it? What are you gonna do about it? And it's just constantly cycling. But when you take that next step, you're like, your brain's like, oh, okay, I see. Yeah. You're closing the loops now. Cool. You can actually chill the fuck out. But in that moment, you just keep sitting there on the couch, stressed and worried and eating and not thinking about your choices. And you're just getting more stressed. Versus you take the step in the right direction. Yeah, it might be hard sometimes, but you're going to feel so much better. Like the amount of, like, I've maybe wanted to work out 3 times this year. Like, seriously, it has just been just crazy. But I've not, like, unless I've been like out of town and not a gym available, I missed the workout. Like, I show up on the days, and trust me, every workout, I'm like, damn, that felt good afterwards. I chase the outcome, not the process, because the process sounds like it sucks. But if I look at the outcome, how great I'm going to feel afterwards, I'll get it done.
Yeah, even there's that immediate outcome. I want to end with just asking, what would you say your non-negotiables are to healthy living for you now? What are your non-negotiables?
Yeah, non-negotiables, and I would even kind of even circling this back to where we even started with the podcast, like still not perfect, but still working on, daily activity, getting my steps in. Again, I don't have them perfectly, but most of the time, staples then instead of non-negotiables, like staples in your life that keep you going. So steps and movement, getting my activity in every day, drink my water. Again, that's also going to help with your appetite, hunger, all of that as well, more than people would realize. And then I think just practicing gratitude. I've been doing a lot more of that this year as well. Just look for the good in every day. Like, especially, I know this is not a political podcast. So like, we all know there's plenty of shit going on in the world. Everyone knows that. But like, find reason to be happy. Like, find a reason to smile every day, whether it's somebody or something or whatever it may be. Like, we have so many things to be grateful for that, like you said, if you can DoorDash something to your door, you have a lot to be grateful for. Yeah. And I think just circling back to that. So I think just
what you look for, you will find.
100% all the time. That's why I do daily wins with so many of my clients. If you're looking for them every single day, you're going to see those things so much more.
Yeah. That's awesome.
That was awesome, man. I was very...
Chase, have you ever listened to a go ahead, Aram.
No, I like that conversation. I think it was very practical. I think a lot of people can relate to this kind of stuff. And it was a very soft skill based conversation. We didn't really talk about the science of nutrition or fitness, but we talked about the mindset stuff, but it was practically applied. And I think that's the shit that a lot of podcasts, a lot of creators, coaches, whatever you want to call them on Instagram are missing, is they talk about victim mindset or they talk about the soft skills and the mindset work, but nobody actually is talking about how to make it work. And I think you did a great job of breaking it down in a way that's digestible and doable for everybody. So thanks, man.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. And we're not sure if you listened to an entire episode or not to know what the final question is, but that we ask every single person. So I'm just going to get right to it. Bye.